Elena never expected betrayal to come from someone she trusted so completely. She had always believed that Marcus was loyal, that he was someone who would never intentionally hurt her. They had met in college, bonded over long nights of shared ideas and late-night coffees, and slowly, over years, their friendship had grown into a partnership. They celebrated each other's successes, offered comfort during failures, and built plans for the future together. It was the kind of bond that felt unbreakable, the kind that most people only dream about. And yet, all of it was about to shatter. In a single moment, it started subtly, almost like a whisper she barely noticed. Elena had been working on a project for months, pouring every ounce of creativity and effort into it. She spent nights sketching, rewriting, planning, making sure that every detail was perfect. Marcus had been involved too, but Elena often felt he relied more on her energy than contributed equally. She had noticed little things, missing emails, ideas that sounded slightly familiar when he mentioned them, but she brushed them off. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to believe that he was as committed as she was. Then came the message. A simple notification on her phone, nothing extraordinary. But when she opened it, her heart sank instantly. It wasn't from Marcus, it was from someone she barely knew. Someone who had once worked in the same office. Someone who had no reason to interfere. The subject line was short. "You should know the truth." Eleanor's hands shook as she tapped the message. Her mind tried to prepare for bad news, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. Attached were photos and documents, screenshots, of conversations she didn't recognize, emails that revealed Marcus' actions behind her back. He had gone to their boss, signed contracts, claimed credit for her work, and made arrangements that benefited him alone. He had taken months of her effort and skill and twisted them into something that made him look like the hero of the story. Elena stared at the screen, her chest tightening, a strange numbness spreading through her limbs. Disbelief was the first wave. She reread everything multiple times, hoping that maybe she had misunderstood, that there was a mistake, that Marcus had some explanation that would make sense. But the more she read, the more the reality became clear. Marcus had betrayed her in the most complete, calculated way possible. There were no excuses, no slips, everything was intentional. He had been planning this for weeks, maybe months, and she had been oblivious while he orchestrated the deception with a smile on his face. Shock gave way to anger. It started small, a tightness in her chest, a heat in her ears, and then it grew into something darker, something that burned from her core. How could he do this? How could someone she had considered family, someone she had trusted with her dreams, betray her so completely? The images on her phone were no longer just evidence, they became symbols of the betrayal, reminders of every night she had stayed late, every idea she had shared, every moment she had trusted him. Elena paced her apartment, phone clutched tightly in her hand, mind racing. She thought about confronting him immediately, storming into his office and demanding an explanation, demanding justice. But a small voice inside whispered caution. She had to be smart. She had to understand the full picture. She had to plan her next move carefully. Impulsive reactions could ruin everything. The betrayal was one thing, but acting recklessly could turn her into someone she didn't want to be. She remembered the past, the times Marcus had been there for her, the laughs, the late-night talks, the promises of always being honest. Those memories now twisted in her mind, making the pain sharper. How could she reconcile the man she thought she knew with the man who had stolen everything she had worked for? The trust she had placed in him felt like a fragile vase, now shattered. On the floor, each shard cut deeper than the last. Eleanor's emotions were a storm. There was hurt, betrayal, anger, disbelief, and a strange thrill. The thrill came from the thought of taking control, of not being a victim, of finding a way to make Marcus face what he had done. Revenge whispered at the edges of her mind, a dangerous and intoxicating idea. She imagined the look on his face, when he realized she knew the truth, when he felt the weight of her anger and disappointment. That image both terrified and excited her. But alongside the thrill was fear. Fear of what revenge could do to her. Fear of letting anger consume her. Fear of becoming someone she wouldn't recognize. She remembered stories she had read, movies she had watched, warnings about how betrayal could lead people down dark paths. She didn't want to lose herself in her desire for payback. She wanted justice, but she also wanted to remain true to her own morals. That internal struggle gnawed at her relentlessly, every hour, every minute, until she could think of little else. Elena began to gather information. She went through every email, every document, every file she had access to, retracing her steps, trying to understand exactly what Marcus had done. She compared dates, verified contracts, and even spoke subtly with colleagues to see if anyone had noticed irregularities. Each discovery added fuel to her fire. Every piece of evidence confirmed her worst fears. Marcus had manipulated situations to benefit himself, disregarding not only her hard work, but also their friendship. Her social circle noticed a change in her demeanor. Elena, usually calm and composed, began appearing tense, distracted, and sometimes distant. Friends asked if she was okay, if something had happened at work, but she gave vague answers, hiding the storm within. She didn't trust anyone yet with the full story, not even those closest to her. The betrayal felt too personal, too raw, and she wanted to process it alone before sharing it at night. Elena replayed moments with Marcus in her mind. The conversations, the shared jokes, the plans, they now felt like lies, carefully crafted performances designed to keep her unaware. The betrayal wasn't just about the project. It was about the trust, the relationship, and the future she thought they shared. Every memory became tainted, every kind word suspect. She realized that Marcus had not only stolen her work, but he had also stolen her certainty, her peace of mind, and her ability to trust. Despite the anger and hurt, Elena also felt a surge of determination. She realized she had two choices: let the betrayal define her, letting anger consume her and dictate her actions, or take control of her response, using the knowledge and power she had gained to navigate the situation wisely. The latter was harder. It required patience, planning, and self-discipline, but it also offered the possibility of satisfaction without losing herself. Elena couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. Each day, as she went about her work, his betrayal lingered like a shadow, following her in every conversation, every glance, every small interaction. She replayed the events over and over in her mind, imagining what she could have done differently, what she could have seen sooner, what she could do now. Her anger simmered, but so did something else: a need for control. She realized that Marcus had taken from her, but he could not take her focus, her clarity, her ability to respond with precision. She began watching him closely, learning his routines, noting his habits. She didn't plan impulsive revenge. She needed the upper hand. Every detail mattered. When he spoke in meetings, she listened for the subtle ways he tried to claim credit, the phrases he used to make himself look indispensable. When he left his desk, she observed which colleagues he approached, which alliances he tried to reinforce. The betrayal had opened her eyes to a world she had previously ignored, a world of office politics, hidden agendas, and unspoken rules. At night, Elena's apartment became her war room. She laid out her evidence, organized emails, contracts, and documents in a way that let her see the full scope of Marcus' actions. She made lists, charts, and timelines. She imagined every scenario of confrontation, every possible outcome, and mentally rehearsed her responses. It was exhausting, but it gave her a sense of purpose. She was no longer overwhelmed by shock and anger. She was preparing, strategizing, sharpening her mind like a blade. Yet, alongside the careful planning, doubt crept in. She wondered if revenge would truly satisfy her, if exposing Marcus would make her feel better, or simply drag her into a cycle of resentment. She thought about the moral cost, the possibility of losing herself to anger. Could she stay true to her own values while pursuing justice? Could she act in a way that was effective but not cruel? These questions haunted her late into the night, keeping her awake, forcing her to weigh every decision with caution. Despite the doubt, the desire for confrontation grew stronger. Elena imagined moments where Marcus would realize she knew everything. The shock in his eyes, the sudden tension, the fear that she might have been a step ahead all along. That thought both thrilled and terrified her. She wanted him to face the consequences, but she also wanted to remain untouchable above the fray. Her revenge had to be clever, precise, and clean, or it could backfire, leaving her vulnerable instead. Of empowered, Elena also began reflecting on Marcus himself. He wasn't just a villain in her mind. He was human. She remembered the times he had helped her, the moments when he seemed genuinely caring, the rare times when he had been honest. She wondered what drove him to betray her. Was it ambition, fear, insecurity? Understanding him didn't excuse his actions, but it helped her see that revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about confronting the truth, exposing the reality of choices, and reclaiming her own power. Her friends noticed her change. Elena seemed calmer in some ways, sharper, more deliberate. She spoke less, but when she did, her words carried weight. No one knew the full story, and she intended to keep it that way. She didn't want sympathy, nor did she want impulsive advice. She needed to think for herself, to act on her own terms. Every interaction was a small rehearsal, every smile a mask hiding the storm within. The tension in the office became almost tangible. Marcus carried on confidently, unaware that Elena was no longer the naive, trusting partner he once knew. Every email she sent, every meeting she attended, every conversation she had was measured, calculated. She learned to blend calm professionalism with subtle observation, so no one suspected how deep her understanding went, how carefully she was preparing for the day of confrontation. As the days passed, Elena realized that revenge was as much about timing as it was about action. Acting too soon could ruin everything. Waiting too long could let him cover his tracks. She became patient, a predator observing her environment, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But even as she prepared, she struggled with the emotional toll. Every plan, every scenario weighed heavily on her mind. She questioned herself constantly, was this worth it? Could she maintain her integrity and still act decisively? Despite the struggle, Elena's resolve hardened. She knew that the real battle was not against Marcus alone. It was against her own fears, her own anger, and her own doubts. The longer she prepared, the more she understood that revenge was not just about punishing someone else. It was about reclaiming her own sense of justice and control. Every step she took was deliberate, every thought sharpened by the lessons of betrayal. By the end of this period, Elena felt a mixture of calm and intensity. She had transformed anger into strategy, hurt into focus, betrayal into clarity. Marcus had no idea what was coming, and that gave her power. But she also understood that the final confrontation would not just test him, it would test her. Could she act without losing herself? Could she face the consequences of her choices? These questions would define the next chapter. The office remained the same on the surface. Marcus smiled, joked, and carried on with his charade. But Elena was no longer the same person he had underestimated. Behind her composed exterior, her mind was a storm of strategy, patience, and controlled emotion. The desire for revenge had become a precise, focused energy. She had moved from shock to preparation, from anger to determination. The next step, confrontation, would reveal whether she could turn that preparation into justice without losing herself entirely. Elena realized that revenge, if handled wisely, could be powerful, but if mishandled, it could consume her. The challenge was not only in exposing Marcus, but in ensuring that her actions aligned with her values, that she emerged stronger rather than broken. She had discovered the paradox of revenge. It was both intoxicating and dangerous, thrilling and exhausting, satisfying and potentially destructive. She had to navigate it carefully. As she left the office one evening, Elena felt the weight of her plans pressing on her shoulders. But she also felt a strange sense of calm. She was ready, not for immediate revenge, not for impulsive confrontation, but for the day when her patience, her strategy, and her clarity would come together. Marcus would face the consequences, but Elena would remain herself, stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The struggle had shifted from raw emotion to careful calculation, and that shift gave her a new kind of power.